All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce. I should have asked you. It's Kneifel is how you pronounce it, right?
It's Kneifel, and this is what I always say. I always say the K is hard, and then think fork and knife. And I'm like a huge eater, so like you ate so much, you're full. So Kneifel.
Kneifel. So Kate Kneifel,
Yeah.
licensed counselor, who's going to talk to us about all things like mental health. But I found her from the Another Mother Runner podcast. What I really liked was that it was, mental health and talking about feelings, but in a very like tangible, actionable way. So that's why I invited her. She also has an awesome podcast. Paused recording for a little while, but there's a little over 30 episodes on there to binge watch. It's called Full of Shift podcast, and it's every episode is just like the idea of one little tangible habit you can add at a time, so that over time you can make a big shift. So without any further ado, I'm going to let her fill you in more. She's also a mother and a runner. Her kids are a little bit older, more like Deanna's kids' age, teenagers. I'll let her fill you in more her background and take over.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's funny, I've been talking to a lot of different running groups, which is really fun, and it's just really neat, especially to see different, women runners. Just a little bit more about me. Yes, all of those things are true. I have my own practice here. I run a practice in Westfield, Indiana, and we really specialize in anxiety, depression, and trauma work. So as with most counselors right now, we've been, pretty busy, as this has been a rough time for all of us, counselors included. There's just a lot of different things going on right now. So, I share that just to kind of normalize some of this process, and this process also, as far as returning back, kind of like getting back into the swing of things and how we're all feeling about that, whether things are really normal or not normal-ish. And then my kids are actually teenagers now. But yeah, definitely went through that whole process of coming back to running after I had my first daughter. My son is adopted. So we've had kind of that experience to bringing family together in different ways. Yeah. So let me see here. To get started, I'm going to make sure. Let me see. Oh, forgive me for just a second here. I'm going to see if I can click on this and share my screen. I might have to be in present mode. 1 second. Let's see.
While you're working on it, I wrote it in the chat, but for everyone who's listening to the recording and not seeing this chat, I also really like that Kate is a former teacher. As you guys know, so am I, and we have quite a few teachers in this group. Amanda is a former teacher as well, and then a couple of the moms who will be watching the recording because they're teaching right now. So I thought that was cool. We have a lot of teachers.
Yes. And you know what else I'm going to do? Sorry, guys. Technology. I got these new, I was telling Allison, I got these new earbuds, and I'll tell you what, they're just not working for me. So hold on 1 second. We're going to go plug in and see if that is better. Can you hear me okay?
A little bit quieter than you were before.
Okay, maybe I might have to use these. I don't think the other ones are going to work either. Okay. Can you hear me again?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So Allison sent me a couple of things that came up for you guys, and we're going to start off with just some basic foundations, okay, of some different things that first sort of sometimes set us up for failure. And this first part is, you hear a lot, and you may even, with really good intentions, this idea, if you change your thoughts, you change your life. Okay. You may have heard that before. I want to start off really kind of debunking that myth. Okay. Most of us have had this experience of like, okay, we're trying to change our thoughts about something, or we're trying to do something else, and it's just not working, right? Like we're trying to think differently, or we're trying to do these different things. And what we end up doing is shaming ourselves when we can't change our thoughts, or like when we try to meditate and we're like, oh my gosh, when I meditate, things get so much worse. It's like it all comes flooding in. Like, why on earth would I meditate? Right. And so it's based on this premise that, if you just switched your thoughts, or, started thinking more positively, you would feel better. Okay. We are going to shift away from that for a minute. And instead of trying to control thoughts or even control different processes, we are going to shift into maybe a different way of thinking of this. And instead looking at, how can we make space for what shows up? How can we be present with what shows up and still move towards what is important for us in our lives? Whether that is, how do I make space for the nerves that show up before my long run, or before the race that I've been training for? Or how do I make space to do my run when I'm worried about my kids, or things are going on with the family, or whatever it is? We're going to talk about some different ways to do that. Okay. And one of the things that I always, look at is being able to, even with this presentation, whether you're listening to it as recording, or I think we have Amanda and Kara, if I remember the names correctly, are on, today, I really just encourage you to we're just going to be kind of curious about what shows up. You may have come to this recording or to today, like when you had really something in mind that you wanted to get out of it, or I want Kate to have the answer for this, or whatever it is, and just kind of hold that and notice that. But we're going to start practicing. I'm just going to invite you to practice some mindfulness, even as we talk about some of this today. And just notice, if you can, I'm going to invite you, just like in this picture, to kind of step towards this place of curiosity and just noticing what shows up, how you feel about some of these things, what's coming up for you, versus this place of judgment. Okay, so that's really the foundation that we have, because any new material or anything that you put out there, if we're coming from a place of judgment, like we want to look at it and say, this is good, bad, right or wrong, winner, loser, man, it sets us up for that really tricky polarization and this difficult dynamic where we almost have to pick a side, versus this place of just noticing, like, okay, this really resonates with me, or this doesn't at all. And actually what Kate is saying is kind of ticking me off. Okay, good. Like, notice that, and just make space for that if possible. Okay, that's what we're going to kind of practice. This is just all, kind of an experiment for, going with that. Now, one of the things that came up, so Allison was kind enough and sent me, I try to make sure that we're addressing, actual concerns that are coming up, that I'm just not like throwing, something at you that it doesn't address a concern. So one of the things that she shared that has come up is just, managing stress right now, and emotions, both, knowing when running is a part of stress management, and kind of looking at that, and when running could be adding to it. But also just in our everyday lives, as we're kind of making this shift and different things are going on right now. And one of the ways that I like to explain this, oh, it's Carrie, not Kara. I'm sorry, Carrie. I just saw you on there. Shoot, that's like the number one error of teachers, right? You don't want to get somebody's name wrong. Sorry about that. It's good to see you. Anyway, how I like to kind of explain this is I always use a balloon. okay, when we're talking about stress. So if you can imagine your body, our souls, our bodies, like a balloon. And just imagine that as you go through your day, different things that, are just a little bit stressful, adding air to that balloon. Okay, so for example, this is so silly, but I'm mad at Apple and I didn't want to buy their AirPods again because mine broke. And so I bought these, and these are making me mad, right? These are different ones. So I've got this presentation. I was like, oh, shoot, I got to figure these out. That might be a little bit of stress. Oh, look at that. And it just fell out. I mean, how perfect is that? That might be a little bit of stress that is being added to the balloon. Okay. Or you might have a doctor's appointment and your son is refusing to put his shoes on, right? The balloon gets bigger. And then, you miss your run. And so you have to run at night and you hate running at night and it's hot and humid out. The balloon gets bigger. Okay. You come home from your run and your husband says, what are we having for dinner? I don't see anything in the fridge. What are we doing? Right. Or your partner says that, the balloon gets bigger. And then all of a sudden, your friend might text you and say, sorry, I have to cancel for Tuesday. And just pow, right? The balloon pops. And it might not be that the friend sending you that text is that big of a deal, right? But it was the final piece that made the balloon pop. And what happens so often to us is that, our friend sends that text, our balloon pops, maybe we send something really snarky back to them. And then we feel really guilty about it later, like, oh, that's terrible, right? But at the same time, if I were to blow up all of these balloons, okay, if I blew up all these balloons, I got these balloons at Walmart, say, and I blow them up and they pop, and I blow them up and they pop, and I blow them up and they pop, and I say, gosh, these balloons, they're like a piece of junk. Every single one of these balloons, I blow it up all the way and it pops every single time. And if I took that balloon then into Walmart, I took that bag and I said, well, these bags are junk. These balloons are horrible. Like, imagine for a minute what the person at the counter would say, right? Like, they would be like, lady, balloons don't hold infinite amounts of air. You cannot blow them up all the way. But we do this to ourselves all the time. All the time. We pop, something happens, and then we think, gosh, there is really something wrong with me. I need to be better here. I need to get my stuff together. I must be doing something wrong. When in reality, there's this flawed conception that we as human beings are infinite and we can just stuff it all in and we can contain it all. And we know from research that that is not true. Our bodies process our stress, our bodies hold on to it if we can't move it through. And to add to this, there's this idea we don't all start with an empty balloon every day. So for example, I'll share personally right now, Allison knows I had to pause the podcast because my dad is very ill. He has dementia, and there's a lot of different things going on there. So when we have other things going on, or if you're dealing with, chronic illness, if you have had some past serious trauma, if you're living in poverty, in danger, all of these different things, your balloon isn't starting all little. Your balloon might be starting right here every morning. And so what that means, of course, is you have less margin until your balloon is going to pop. And what that means for us is really being able to consider, okay, knowing where we are, that means sometimes we have to be able to give ourselves a little grace and care for ourselves and have an awareness of what's adding to our balloon and what's reducing to our balloon at different times. Because the other tricky thing that comes in with this, with the balloon, and this is what's so hard, and as moms, we know this, and if you have a family of any sort, this. If you have a challenging job, the bigger your balloon is, the more you feel like, I don't have time to do any of those things. So your balloon's real big, and then we're set up even more because we're like, you know what? It would be great to take like this nice walk in nature or go for this run. I don't have time. I can't do this. And my argument here would be being able to notice, okay, is that really true? And how much time are you losing when we're having these understandable kind of explosions of our balloons? Okay. Now, this last piece with the balloon is, some of us, our balloon pops in, it's external, right? Like we might yell or get mad, we might do something physical, we can kind of notice it. But there are many of us who our balloons, it implodes, right? So we like keep it together. It might not be safe where we are, or we might not have grown up in a family that it's safe to explode, right? Or just socialization, especially with women, are socialized like, we are not supposed to be angry, like don't get angry, like that's a no-no, right? But that imploding shows up as stomach aches, body aches, headaches, difficulty sleeping. Yeah, Carrie, I see you nodding. Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. And I think if we can start to notice this, right? And again, from a place of curiosity, what is adding to our balloon, creating some stress, and what can we do that helps reduce it? And to bring it back to running, there's no right or wrong answer with that, and which is what is tricky, right? But it is, the more we start the self-awareness of noticing how things register in our bodies, the better we are, and in our souls, the better we are to be able to know what works for us at different times. And it's sort of an experiment, like, okay, I don't feel like running today. It's been a stressful day. I'm going to go for this run. And then if you come back, notice, do I feel better? Or are you like, wow, I am just wiped? Okay, note that. And that's information maybe that you can use as you're making that decision for next time. So, I mean, I don't know if there's any questions about that. Allison, I don't know if we want to open up like in between or what works best. I feel like there's only a couple people here. If they want to talk, we can.
If they want to comment on anything as you go, I just welcome them to put it in the chat. And then if you feel like it flows with it to stop and address what they're saying, we could do it that way. Do you see the chat? Do you want me to type something in there?
I don't think I can see the chat with sharing. Oh, wait.
Did something little?
Now I can, I think. Hold on. There it goes.
Yeah. And
so now I can see it.
Yeah, if anything comes up for you when she's talking, just put it in the chat, and then we can kind of stop there and talk about it, or save it to the end. It's up to you. I love the idea of it's all information, because I use that from the personal training sense, like when things don't feel right, or you don't feel like you can do it right, that's information as well. Like I like that. It's all information.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the balloon's like a super helpful, like just, like metaphor to think about how that builds up during the day. And just for context, I'll have to jump off for a work call at 9:45. I pushed as long as I could on that call.
Oh, yeah, totally fine. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so really just stress is just a form of energy, right? And so it is it gives us some information. It's a form of energy. We can start noticing our balloons and seeing where we are to start addressing that, right? So most of us with this pandemic, our balloons got real big, real fast, right? And they're still pretty big for a lot of us, because the reality is life continues to go on. So we have all of the other things, plus, these different pandemic concerns that we haven't had to address before. So the one thing we've got is, okay, stress, and just this understanding that our bodies and our souls are not infinite, and we need to be able to care for them. And it is not, if our balloon breaks, just as it's sort of silly to try to return a balloon for that reason, the same is true when we are really shaming ourselves for what's going on there. Okay. Now, the next piece is another sort of activity. And if you have, sometimes this can be helpful. And if you have nearby a piece of paper, or even just like a magazine or a book, if you want to grab it for this. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I have this book and I've got problems written at the top. Okay, so we've talked about kind of energy, but also we're going to talk about just a minute our thoughts and just sort of our relationship with our thoughts. And this can be a good way to do it. So if you can just take a minute, even just think in your head about some of the things you've been dealing with. And you don't have to share these are not going to be shared. It's just for you, or you can write enough just that you know for you. But in the middle of your piece of paper, if you can just write a couple of things that have been coming up for you. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to write 3 here. Okay. Okay, everybody got theirs? Okay, so I'm gonna share mine for a minute. So I wrote mine here. So just 3 things that I shared that I wrote on mine was, okay, there's some issues with my dad going on. So I'm caring for my dad, looking at that, right? That's something that's going on. My daughter is graduating high school. Oh, bless, right? And then for work, we are hiring some new people for my practice, and just kind of going through that process and wanting to make sure we get the right person. Okay. Now, go ahead and look at your things. And if you have the ability to like put it on your book or on your piece of paper, that's great. So I want you, for just a minute, I'm going to invite you. You don't have to do this. I'll do it as well, but it can be helpful to experience this yourself. For a minute, I'm going to turn to the side here. I want you to put your book and your problems as close to your face as possible and still be able to read them. Okay, so just notice for me, don't go cross-eyed, please. All right, do you see that? Okay, now I want you to leave them there for a minute. I'm going to put my book down because you guys know how to do it. Now, I want you to imagine that I said, okay, Allison, Amanda, Carrie, you guys now, you see those problems, you're aware of those problems, but now I want you to leave that piece of paper or that book exactly where it is and go do the rest of your day. Go run your errands, take care of your kids, cook dinner. And imagine for a minute how you would feel if you had to do that. So just imagine what you would say to me. Like, some clients are like, that would not be safe. I would tell you, you're dumb. I'm not doing that, right? So just notice like what it would be like to go throughout your day. Now let's do another. Ready? So now, instead of it being here, I want you to take it arm's length out. Okay? So just notice, like when mine is at arm's length, I can still see my problems. I can still see, okay, my dad, graduation, new therapist, hiring new therapist. Yep. Right? But now if I said, okay, now go take care of the kids, go do the stuff, go to work, do the emails. Notice, is it easier or harder with it out here? So most people, like, it's a little bit easier, but they're still like, I don't know, right? Okay, now the last one, take the same thing and I just put it in front of you. Just put it down right in front of you. Okay. Now, the problems are the same, right? They haven't changed. My dad, graduation, new therapist, they're still there. But if I said, okay, now go throughout the rest of your day, would you be able to do the rest of your day at this point? Yes. Yes. So what happens with a lot of us, and this really is addressing this idea of like getting out of your head, right? We can get really in our head with difficult thoughts, whether it's just, when we're not running or even when we are running, sometimes we can get really in our head about things. Like if, like, for example, I have a foot issue, which I've been looking, Allison, I love your stuff so much. I've been trying to do your stuff. I was like doing all your stuff. So I have a foot issue. And when my foot starts to hurt, guess where my clipboard or my book goes? Whoop. Right? I immediately start thinking, oh shoot, it's gonna hurt. What if I can't finish the run? Am I damaging it? Is this normal? Right? All of those things. What we call that when things are right here is we call that cognitive fusion. Okay, when you're like stuck to a thought. So remember at the beginning when I said we're not looking at, and this is all tied to mindfulness in a different way, in that we're not looking at changing your thought. So I'm not saying my dad's fine. Oh, my dad will be fine. It will all be fine. Or I'm not saying I'm not sad at all about my daughter graduating. It's totally fine. No. But when it gets really close and we're stuck to that thought, that is when our life becomes very narrow and painful and difficult. But if we're able to notice, like, oh, wow, yep, here I am, like, there's the thought about my hurt foot. Okay, all right. We kind of pull it out here for a minute. That can help just give us some space to still move forward in the way that we need to in our lives, according to our values, what's important to us, without that overwhelm. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Any questions about any of that with the clipboard? Okay. Yeah. So
actually, I do have a question. Would you recommend like going through this exercise sometimes when you have the stuff in your head, like as a sort of like metaphor, like write it down and leave it? It's still there,
yes.
but yeah.
Yes, actually. And that is another technique that I don't have that we would go in today, but just that is a way of containing it or compartmentalizing. Okay, so a lot of times it can be helpful. Yeah, if you do this and just kind of notice where you are, yes, to write it down and just say, okay, it's there. I know I can't fix it right now, or what it might not be fixable, right? That might just be something that we need to work through and live as part of life. But right now, I want to be able, the valued action is for me to be present with my kids, or to enjoy time with my partner, to be outside, to get my run in, whatever it is. That is a technique that can help us to be present. Right? So we're not trying to change something. We're not trying to over control, which, I don't know about you guys. I really like to have control of stuff, right? A lot of runners do, I'm going to check off that training date and all of the things. But that can really help with that. Yeah. So this piece here is just another metaphor that can be helpful with the thoughts. Is if you imagine like being in this sort of tug of war with, if you imagine like this huge vicious monster that might be your scary thoughts or the anxiety or the depression or just the fear or sadness, and it's over this huge canyon, and you've got a rope and the scary monster's over here and you're on the other side and you're pulling back and forth and you're so afraid that the monster is going to pull you into that canyon, right? We do that so often. And instead, for us to consider just dropping the rope, right? Like, just like, oh, I just need to like drop the rope for a minute. A lot of times that is enough just to give us a little bit of space there. You know, and that's, you know, self-explanatory as far as, you know, struggling to eliminate uncomfortable thoughts often sets us up for failure and it exhausts us. I mean, we've all had that, and we've all had that feeling of just being exhausted from that tug of war with whatever, you know, kind of monster or big thing we feel like we're going up against. And for some strategies, I'll stop here and then, you know, we can have some questions, and some of the questions or anything might, you know, come up with, you know, some other things. Is, you know, one thing to help us do that is really, a lot of us, when we have difficult thoughts and feelings, or we're feeling the big things, you know, the one thing I talk about is we like to do the difficult thought dance, which is obsess, stuff, bounce it onto somebody else, right? Boop, 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 right? This is what we do with hard stuff, right? And we all do it. We all do it. But instead, you know, another way of saying that is we kind of hot potato it. You know, Glennon Doyle talks about that. Like, don't hot potato it out to somebody else, to see, you know, if we can hold it gently. And to recognize that is something difficult, and it's not something that's often taught to us. And so it can be challenging, you know, when we're doing that. But that is the same thing that comes up, you know, if you're trying some different mindfulness practices. It's just really, you know, mindfulness essentially is just different ways to practice being present. So whether that practice is, oh, I'm noticing where my balloon is and what adds it or not. I'm noticing where my thoughts are. Okay, I'm trying to give myself some room for the thoughts. Or I'm noticing, gosh, you know, I really want to stuff this down, or I really want to like scream at my partner for not doing the laundry. And I know that that's probably not appropriate, but I want to bounce it onto them. Using some of those techniques can be helpful, you know, just to be a little bit more mindful. So I'll stop there. And I've got obviously more I can share, but if there are any questions or anything with that, or anything I haven't covered that maybe. Oh, Carrie, look at that peanut. Oh my goodness.
Sorry, we just finished breakfast over here.
Oh, so sweet. Look at that. Red. Is it red hair? Red hair?
No, it's actually, that's just from the lighting. It's very, very light though.
Got it. Sweet.
I have a question about like a specific type of stress or anxiety, and we sort of talked about this at the beginning. It's something we talked about on our call together on Tuesday with our regular Tuesday call with the mentorship. It's just right now with like re-entering, a few of us were feeling this like almost, who would call it, ridiculous or like extreme feelings of like doom, or returning to one girl talking about like, you know, leaving her kid and feeling like, what if this is the last time I, you know, kiss my kid goodbye, like in a way that's like creeped up and that has never been that way before. Or for me, and I shared this on Tuesday, every time I come to a four-way stop lately, and I don't drive much, I maybe went months without being in a car, I feel like I'm gonna get T-boned by like someone coming from an intersection. And it's like, where are these new feelings of just like extreme doom coming from, and then how
Yes.
are there any strategies to
Yeah.
deal with them?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, like it's all recognizing them with curiosity without judgment, but also like I also don't want to think about that every time I go through an intersection.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I guess maybe some frame of reference for some understanding about why this might be coming up. Um, we have been through a really difficult year, and our nervous systems are amazing, and they are able to get us through some really difficult things. Now, what is also interesting though is when our nervous system starts to feel a little bit safer. So as things are going on and we're able to do a little bit more, what happens is our bodies and our nervous systems, they were holding on to all of that. They were holding on to the stress and the trauma and all of those difficulties. And what happens is when it gets a little bit safer, there is a letdown. And so all of a sudden, it is safer to feel, which I know that sounds weird. Like, okay, well, why is this all coming out now? Or I don't like that. But it is a way of your nervous system working through what possibly was not safe to work through earlier. Okay. And so it may be coming out at a stop sign. It may be coming out, with this fear of, losing, is this going to be the last time I say goodbye to my child? And being able to, I know it is very hard just to say like, okay, can we kind of make space for it? But what the research shows us is that when we're able to name something, so for example, just Allison, your ability to name like, wow, this is showing up for me really strongly. It feels weird. I don't know why necessarily this is happening. I don't want to feel it all the time. And then, it may be, one of the techniques we use is noticing where it's showing up in your body. So Allison, if you don't mind, I don't know, when you have that feeling at a stop sign, do you notice where it shows up in your body?
Like tension in my
Chest.
chest, yeah.
Okay. So one of the ways that I say, because, there's nothing worse than someone telling you like, well, try to make some space for an arm. I'm going to be like, how am I supposed to do that? Like, thanks for nothing, right? One of the techniques you can use for that, other than some of these metaphors, and is, this practice of allowing, which is notice where it is in your body. Imagine you can like take a Sharpie marker and outline it. Okay, so you're outlining it with the Sharpie marker. And then you would pick a color that you'd want to fill it in. So like, what color might be good to fill in that space?
Oh, you're asking me. I don't know. First thought was red.
Okay, yeah, so maybe it's red, right? And just notice if you want a texture, if it's like fog or you want it to be water or sparkly. And then what you do is as you're noticing that, when you inhale, you're going to imagine that spot. So let's say this is where it is, okay? You're going to imagine that spot as you inhale, expanding across your chest. So literally making space for it. So inhale. And when you exhale, going back to where it is. And being able to do that a couple of times, typically 4 times, and noting, what do I notice after that? Now, because, Allison, I know a little bit just from you from Instagram and some of the work that you do, some of us really like, we like information and numbers and things like that. And so being able to scale it too, like, wow, right now, this fear is like, it's a 7. It's like a 7, okay? Do the breathing and then see like, okay, now it's about a 5. Or it might be, it's still a 7. Wow, like that is very strong. What I would recommend then doing is noticing how long it lasts. Be able to make that space for it and notice. Okay, if you check in like when you got home or maybe when you started doing some work, whatever, oh, it's gone. Okay, or, oh, this is staying a long time, that can give you a good idea of if it's something like that needs some more attention or some different strategies, or if it's something like, yeah, this is something I'm dealing with right now. It doesn't seem to last longer than 15 minutes, whatever it is. Mm-hmm.
That's helpful. For me, it doesn't last very long at all. Basically, when I'm out of the car, I feel better, but something about being in the car, I don't know. And I'm about to drive 4 hours tomorrow, so that's a good timing for this technique. But I love that because that's actually something we talk about a lot from a physical body standpoint as using our breath to make space from like stretching our bodies from the inside. So it's cool to see the crossover of the technique.
Yeah. Something else that is a very simple technique, but is a body-based technique that can calm our vagus nerve, which really controls a lot of our nervous system, is truly, if you place a hand over your heart and a hand on your belly, just that alone is calming for your vagus nerve.
Yeah. I just had a thought that I don't know if this may not make a bunch of sense to you, Kate, but I think that they'll know what I'm talking about, and I can circle back and explain it to you. But like we talk about asymmetries and areas of compression on our body, and we do a bunch of assessments at the beginning of the mentorship to identify those places. And my assessments identify that I am compressed here. And then putting those two things together and I feel that tension here when those anxieties come up, like makes so much sense. And I wonder if some of you, if you kind of went through the same exercise, if you are limited on your applies, like where you have front side compression, if that's where you feel it, or like those of you who are limited on your overhead reach, do you feel the tension more in your neck and your back when it comes up? That's actually, and I know Carrie, you are overhead reach, and yeah, that's where you feel it. So that's kind of cool to see how the two pieces are connected.
Yes, that is so interesting. Yes. Yeah. One more technique with that, just as it is another very simple technique, is we know that bilateral stimulation, so bi to lateral, side to side, like running, helps calm our nervous system as well. Right. Now, there are other ways though that you can do that. So for example, in some of the work that I do when we're doing trauma work in sessions, we use bilateral stimulation to help process stuck memories and different aspects of that we have neurologically. However, you can also use bilateral stimulation just to calm your nervous system. So one easy way to do that is it's called the butterfly hug, which sounds so, I don't know. I don't like the name of it, but it is what it is. But it is just crossing your hands at your wrists and placing them right below your collarbone here and just tapping slowly. So just breathing and tapping slowly. This is also good for your nervous system as well. And it kind of mimics almost that compression that you get as a hug, when someone else is hugging you. That can be very calming. So I have clients that will use this before they take a test, or they'll like tap the side of their legs. People who have difficulty when they wake up in the middle of the night, feeling anxious, will tap a little bit. And it doesn't have to be hard at all. Kids, you will find with your kids, if you like tap as you're hugging, if you tap the outside of their shoulders, kids tend to like that too, or even just a rub back and forth. It's very calming.
Oh, bye, Amanda.
I'm so sad I have to leave, but this has already been so great. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thanks, Amanda.
All right, I'll see y'all later. Bye.
All right, bye. That's interesting too, because there's so much crossover in the things that we talk about. Because we talked about that lymph. Was that this week? My brain is like, I don't even know what's happening and when, but I think that was this week where we talked about the lymph stuff.
That was just Tuesday, yeah.
That was just 3 days ago. On Tuesday, we went through this like series of lymph flow system, and this spot right here is like the first spot where your lymph system will get like clogged up. So opening that like space up too, and how that's all connected to the vagus nerve, all the pieces. It's so cool how they're connected.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
This has been so helpful. I love all the and perfectly timed for me and this week, because my balloon is like here.
Yes.
I would agree with that on the perfectly timed. Allison, we were talking about getting my license back. I finally got it back, so now I get to go to work tomorrow.
Oh wow. Very good nurse, and she's back to work after her maternity leave for the first time tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It's been, I had some troubles. I was mentioning, just had some troubles getting my practicing registration back, just backlog anyways. And so I ended up with an extra week off, which was great, but now it means that I now have to go back to work tomorrow.
Now it's real.
Which I have mixed feelings about it. Yes, there will be a lot of that before work tomorrow,
that
for sure.
So good. It already like
it does.
Calms me down.
Yeah. It's actually something that I've used in my practice with my clients before as well, but I don't know, Kate, if you ever experienced this, but because I work in mental health nursing, and I find that all of these things I always use with my clients, but I never use on myself. I never think to. I'm like, oh wait, I should be doing that too. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting too, people who go into this type of work are typically, very caring and service oriented. And so it's very easy to forget about our own needs as well. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Story of my life.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I haven't worked out all week, even though I've been posting about exercising on social media. It is what it is.
I do think that is kind of the blessing in a weird way of this pandemic, at least for me, in that in some ways, because things have gotten so intense, and especially in the mental health field, there's so much going on and there's a very high need. For me, at least at this point, I'm like, I can't afford to not do this. Like, I know, like, wow, I mean, it's just like, I've got to do this. There's really no choice because it being so intense, like this will take me down. If I am not watching my balloon and caring for myself, woof, we're gonna be in trouble here, right? So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, like you said at the beginning, if the balloon pops, how much time do you lose when that happens versus taking the time ahead of time? And I think you could do a total like parallel with running, right? Doing the things, the warm-ups, the strength workouts, where not progressing intentionally so that you are ending up injured and then losing all your progress. Hi, Luca.
Sorry, is he making? I'll mute myself. He's just like sitting way over there in the corner, just chatting to himself.
Make cute little voice. Mine will be in here. Oh, here he comes. You want to say hi?
Oh,
You are a mess.
hello.
What are you eating?
Hi.
Goldfish?
Hi, buddy.
Well, that's all I have. Do you have anything? Any questions?
No, I think, like I said, this was just really good timing before I go to work tomorrow. So I'll keep all of this very fresh in my mind before I head in the morning.
I will keep you in my thoughts for tomorrow as well.
Thanks.
So much, Kate, for your time.
Thank you, Kate.
Absolutely.
if it's helpful at all to you, I can send you the recording as well. Sometimes it's helpful to hear the things that I say again, or things that I can't do. Would like to.
Are you asking me? Sorry. I
Yeah,
wasn't sure.
if it's helpful to you,
Oh,
I
sure.
can send you the recording.
Sure.
Because sometimes
Sure.
I like to say something one way, and I'm like, oh, and then I forget.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you again so much. I got so much out of it.
Yeah.
So here to do on the recording. Where can they, if any follow-up questions, that okay? If they want the best place to do so.
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah, just my email.
Email. Okay.
Yep.
The information.
That'll work great.
Well, thank you again.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Good luck, Carrie.
Yes, good luck.